Hello everybody, how you doing? How's everything? So, I'm not going to waste your time. Let's talk about determinism versus free will. Now, I'm going to prove that free will does exactly exist using different methods and different philosophical teachings, right? So, number one, let's establish the definition of determinism. Determinism is a philosophy that states that everything that we do, everything that we think about, is a result of prior conditions or prior causes. So whatever next move that we're going to make is attached to our biology, our social conditioning, and our environment, right? So therefore, free will does not exist. And that choice is an illusion. And to take it one step further, they'll argue that the laws of the universe creates cause and effect. All these laws of the universe, the laws of nature, is the reason why we act, and everything is predetermined. So, and this is their justification to say that free will does not exist. Now, if you think about it, essentially they're saying that freedom, or our understanding of freedom, is attached to cause and effect. So every move that we make, everything that we do, the effect is because of the past, the cause, right? So you can look it up. So now you can look it up anywhere, right? And most determinists will agree that, well, hard determinists, right, will agree that free will doesn't exist. Now, the problem with determinism and determinists themselves is because they misunderstand freedom, what freedom actually is and what it actually means. Now, freedom, for you to understand free will, you must understand what freedom is for you to understand free will. Freedom is the ability to do whatever you want within this reality that's humanly possible, free of restrictions from external factors, right? And external factors would be like authority, would be the laws that are set in place, would be so forth, right? So let me break it down. Your will is free as long as nobody else's will stops you from acting and moving. I'm going to say this again. Your will is free, unrestricted, as long as no one else's will compels you or imposes their wants and beliefs and desires upon you. That's how free will works. So in order to further develop free will, there's three components of the will. First is will itself. Will is the desire, motivations, intentions and your wants, right? That's what will is. What do you want? What is your desire? That's what will is. The second component of will is willpower, the determination to enact your wills or your desires and your wants. How strongly do you want your will, and what are you willing to do in order to make your will come to fruition, come to reality? The third component is what free will is, right? So now you have a desire, you have determination to fulfill your desires. Free will says you can either continue fulfilling your desires or you can not fulfill your desires, right? So for instance, if I wanted to drink water, right, I can say, my free will can say, drink water today. Or I can proceed drinking water, or my free will can say, don't drink water. I can fast, right? Fast from water for however long it may be. So as you can see, I have a want, and then my free will can negate that previous want. Free will also says that if somebody else imposes their will upon me, I can either submit to their will willingly, right? Or I can rebel against their will or nullify their will. So I'm gonna explain it. if somebody wants to, if somebody tells me, hey, I want you to eat cake, I can say no, because that's my will. They want me to eat cake, I don't want to eat cake, right? So I've rebelled against their will. Now, if I wanted to eat cake, then I can easily listen to them and, okay, because what their will, does it conflict with my will? So therefore I can listen, yeah, you know what, I do want cake, so I take the cake, right? So that's what free will is the ability to proceed with your will or somebody else's will, or the ability to rebel against your own will or rebel against somebody else's will. Now, this is important because our understanding of free will is very practical, is lived experience. The determinist idea of freedom is metaphysical. It's not physical. It's metaphysical in a sense, because they're saying because of cause and effect, you are not free. But free will says, right, I am free because there's no imposition placed upon me, right? So now nobody else's will is stopping me from moving, or stopping me from choosing what I want, right? So now we have a practical lived experience of free will. This is why many people, when they say, oh, I feel free, but a determinist will say, you're not free. What it is, determinists are psychologically saying you're not free, but the individual is experiencing, their senses is telling them otherwise. This is why they say, I feel free. Why? You are free. If you're not in prison, if you're not paralyzed, if you're not shackled, if you're not have handcuffs, right? You have the ability to move, therefore you are free. You see? So the live life experience is fundamentally different from the intellectual, theoretical understanding of freedom. And this is where the disconnect happens between determinists and people that believe in free will. They're defining free will on they're defining freedom, I should say, on two different fundamental planes, right? And this is where I would say that determinists are intellectually dishonest, because free will has a tradition already that comes from previous thoughts, right? And you cannot negate these traditions to define freedom the way you want to be defined freedom, right? So, and what do I mean by this? I'll give you 3 examples of freedom, right? Prometheus. Zeus said to Prometheus not to give human beings fire. Prometheus says, I want to give humans fire. Why? To protect themselves from animals. You know, you could go into Greek mythology and you'll find this out. Zeus believed that the fire belongs to the Greek gods and humans were unworthy to possess it. But Prometheus says, you know, I need to give fire to human beings in order for them to protect themselves, because nightfall is going to happen. They need fire so they can see. Animals can attack. They need fire to protect themselves. Humans need to eat. Therefore, they need fire to cook. But Zeus says no. So as you can see, Zeus's will versus Prometheus' will is at odds with one another. So Prometheus rebels against the will of Zeus, and he gives human fires despite Zeus saying otherwise. You see? So our definition of free will, the practical lived experience, actually matches the mythology. I'll give you a second example of free will, right? Adam and Eve. God told Adam and Eve not to eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. But as we all know the story, Adam and Eve still proceeded anyway. Despite listening and understanding the will of God that told them not to eat it, because that was his desire, they chose otherwise. They rebelled against the will of God and chose to eat it anyway. So as you can see, free will is, like I said before, the ability to rebel against your own will and the ability to rebel against somebody else's will. This is important. This is crucial. So we see in the practical lived experience of free will matches with two different philosophical or mythological teachings. Now, I'll give you one in real life. Tyrants, authoritative figures, right? Corrupt leaders that want to dominate their subjects. You know, they spend millions of dollars trying to subjugate their people, trying to oppress their people, trying to condition them to think that they have no control so that way they can maintain their power. However, we see revolutions happen every single time because the will of the people is different from the will of the corrupt leader. They're at odds with one another. The corrupt leader wants to maintain power and he wants to control his people in any shape, fashion, or form. But the will of the people says no. And this is what causes them to rebel against their authoritative figure, the tyrant, right? Or the king, whatever the case may be. And we see revolutions happen all the time. So for us to understand free will in its totality, we see that free will, the individual's will, can either cooperate with another person's will or they can compete with another person's will. So this is why determinism, I should say hard determinism, doesn't understand what freedom is, and this is why they miss the mark. This is why their understanding of freedom is wrong, and therefore their understanding of them stating that free will is an illusion is completely wrong. I'll explain the prior causes now, right? And you can rewind this video if you want to and listen to it again so you can rebuttal what I have to say or confirm what I have to say, right? But now, let's engage with free will themselves. Determinist says that free will is an illusion. Choice is an illusion. Free will does not exist. Here's the problem. Free will can only exist because of consciousness. I'm going to say this again. Free will can only exist because of consciousness. Your ability to desire, your ability to move, right? You have this choice to move. I can pick up my hand any single time I want to. I can hold my breath anytime I want to. I can close my eyes anytime I want to. You choose to eat. I can choose to sit down. I can choose whatever I want that's humanly possible because of consciousness, right? Consciousness, our subjective experience, right, is the awareness of the individual in relationship to the external world. I'm going to say that again. Consciousness is the awareness of the individual, our internal states, in relationship to the external world. That's the only reason why free will can exist, is because we're conscious. We're living beings. So now, if determinists wants to say that free will is an illusion, they would have to go a step further and state that consciousness itself is an illusion. Because free will only exists because of consciousness. The ability to choose it only exists because of consciousness, period. Full stop. So for determinists to say that we don't have choice, they would also have to take it a step further and say consciousness is an illusion, right? Now, here's the problem. If a determinist is going to say that consciousness itself is an illusion, because guess what? Everything that we do is a result of prior causes. So that means even our consciousness is determined, right? By their logic. So that means consciousness itself would be an illusion. And if a determinist would have to be logically consistent and say consciousness is an illusion, they would also have to say reality is an illusion itself. And if reality is an illusion, that means their own rational thinking indeterminism crumbles. Because how could you take a position as determinist if everything is an illusion? Free will is an illusion based on the determinist logic, but free will can only exist because of consciousness. So therefore, consciousness must also be an illusion. And if consciousness is an illusion, then how can we even trust reality as it is? So that means all of reality becomes an illusion. And if all of reality is an illusion, then any premise that we take, any idea that in our understanding, any philosophical argument, everything, mathematics itself, they all crumble and become an illusion. And this is what determinists has to contend with. It gets very fascinating. Now, that's a very difficult task that determinists have to contend with. They would have to, man, that's an extremely difficult task to say that consciousness is an illusion itself. Now let's strengthen the argument even further. The argument for free will even further. Why would the universe, the laws of the universe, which is impersonal by their own philosophy, an impersonal, unconscious universe, create an illusion that humans have choice? That's illogical. It's so illogical that we have global confirmation. Choice is a concept that exists in multiple different cultures and multiple different languages. You could go to China, and the Chinese have a word or a concept for choice. You go to Japan, go to Africa, go to Europe, go to Australia, go to South America. The vast majority of different cultures and different languages have a word for choice or decision making, and they have a concept of choice. So are you stating that the universe is gaslighting everybody practically every human being on the planet? That would have to be, that's a crazy claim to make. The universe, which is impersonal, unconscious, has given human beings the illusion of choice, but yet every human being, almost every culture on the planet have a concept for choice. So that means the universe is gaslighting human beings to believe that they have choice when choice is an illusion based on the determinist logic, which is illogical. So now, there's two things that determinists have to contend against. Global confirmation. Almost everybody have an understanding and word for choice. Majority of human beings in their culture have a concept for choice. And two, in order to say that human beings' free will is an illusion, they have to go a step further and say consciousness is an illusion, because it's consciousness that makes us understand that we have choice in the first place and free will in the first place. So that's two things that determinists have to combat. I don't want to make this video any longer. There's more argumentations. I will make another video. Trust me, there is a lot of argumentations. So please, engage with what I said with honesty, engage with what I said with honesty. Please give credit to where credit is due. Don't just take my arguments and pass it off as itself, because these arguments are very hard to come up with, extremely difficult to come up with, right? But I'll have more arguments to dispel hard determinism. And I'm telling you, these arguments get crazy, crazy. So please stay tuned, subscribe, and follow me. Thank you. My name is James, by the way, James Eugene.